Fiona, how was your trip?
It was awesome. It was so amazing to go back to Tanzania, and then I spent a week in Kenya visiting some friends. And it was just crazy packed with seeing so many people that I know from my previous two trips to Tanzania. And meeting Kate was awesome. You look so different without a hijab.
Yeah, sure.
um, but yeah, it was so cool to be able to meet with everyone in Stone Town in Zanzibar because that place just means so much to me, and it was so amazing to meet everyone there. So it was great.
Good,
Sorry, that was weird.
good. You're back. Okay,
Technical difficulties.
so guys, why don't we go ahead and get started? And I think it's fun that we have alumni from every one of our countries from the summer represented in this. And I think that one of the really cool things about this and bringing you guys together to reflect on the experience and think about what's next is a chance to do some cross-filtering and building of network amongst you guys who are all over the country. You engaged in similar experiences over the summer, but in different places. So to start off with, why don't we just go down the line and each one of you introduce yourselves, who you are, where you're from, where you go to school, where you spent the summer as an unofficial ambassador, and what you did there, and then also something you miss about being in your host community. And it sounds like there's a little bit of an echo, so maybe if we could just all mute when we're not talking, that might make it easier to understand people. So Sasha, do you want to get started?
Yeah, I can start. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Sasha. I'm from Norwalk, Connecticut, and I go to Lehigh University where I'm a junior studying global studies and Spanish. I spent 6 weeks in Morocco with AUA, and I was working at the Greenside Development Foundation, and I ended up teaching English, which was a huge surprise to me and my partner, Sammy, but we ended up enjoying it a lot. And then I also worked on some communications pieces for them and worked on some newsletters and edited grant proposals and stuff like that, and that was really cool. And one thing I think I really miss about Morocco is the sense of unity there. I feel like since I've been home, I haven't felt as part of a more welcoming community. Not that my school isn't great, it's a different vibe over here. So yeah.
Thanks, Sasha. Julia, why don't you go next, and we'll just go straight across.
Hi, my name is Julia, and I'm from California originally, but I studied international relations in the Near East at Washington College in Maryland. Over the summer, I was an unofficial ambassador in Dushanbe, Tajikistan, and there I worked with ACTED, with the Watershed NGO, and I also worked as an ESL teacher at Bacteria Cultural Center. And I would say definitely what I miss are my students and having that daily opportunity to interact with them and really make an impact because it's it's hard to stay in touch, but it's possible. But it's nice to have that daily connection with people. So I do miss that. It's a bit more difficult from here.
Okay, thanks, Julia.
Thank you.
Is it my turn?
I think we got Kate next, but thank you for being willing to volunteer.
Hi, sorry. Hi guys, my name is Kate, and I spent 6 weeks of the summer in Zanzibar, and I was teaching at the English-speaking International Muslim School, which is actually where Fiona, who is a Zanzibar alum, was teaching 2 years ago. And I actually got to see her while I was there for one day, which was nice, so got to meet her. But the thing I missed, and grew up in California, and now I go to Rollins College, which is a small school in Florida. And what I miss the most is definitely my students and being at the school. And I also just miss overall pace of life in Zanzibar and how much slower it was. Because here now, classes are going and everything's just so fast and the week flies by. It's terrible.
Okay, thanks, Kate. Jayla.
Hi, my name is Jayla, and I'm from Utah. I go to the University of Utah, and I'm studying French and International Studies. I was also in Morocco this summer with Sasha, and I was working at Zawiya City Absalom, which was where I was working in a community center, and I was organizing a summer camp and teaching a little bit of French. And then for the last 2 weeks, I was at another village called Tarmulat, and I was working teaching French again, and then organizing and helping with some of these projects that had to do with a weaving cooperative that the women there put together. And what I miss the most is definitely the uncertainty of each and every day. I loved waking up in the morning and being prepared but not really know what was going to get thrown at me, and that allowed me to learn so much. And I just kind of fell back into my regular routine back here at school, so trying to get used to that now.
Okay, thanks, Jayla. Isaiah, go ahead. I think you're muted. If you unmute.
Yes, I was muted. Sorry about that. So, hello, everybody. My name is Isaiah. I was in Indonesia this summer with Caroline. I was interning at Kampu Halaman, which is just an NGO where they work on video diaries and stuff of that sort. I go to Seton Hall University. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and my major is communications.
And what do you miss about being in Indonesia?
I had a very nice room there, and I also miss the food.
Okay. Fiona, thanks, Isaiah.
Okay, so my name is Fiona. I am from Seattle, Washington, but I went to school in North Carolina at a college called Guilford College. I just graduated this past May, so yeah, adulting now. And what else? I went, sorry, I went with AUA to Zanzibar for 6 weeks 2 summers ago, and I taught at the English-speaking international Muslim school, like Kate, and absolutely loved it there. And then I also studied abroad through CIEE, which is another study abroad company that brings students all over the world, and I studied abroad in the mainland of Tanzania for 4 months. So I have some very different experiences from both the mainland and Zanzibar, and I loved both of them a lot. It's hard to say what I miss the most. I guess it sounds cliche, but like the people and the connections and the relationships I made there. And I try really, really hard to stay in touch with as many people as possible. So I think that helps, but definitely miss the people.
Thanks, Fiona. And one of my favorite things about these Welcome Home webinars is that we get alumni from previous years that come back, and it's always fun for me to hear what they're up to a few years later and how they think about the experience a few years later. And so, Fiona, we're going to have a whole discussion, and then we're going to bring you in to get some of your perspectives and retrospective on it. But first, Caroline, nice to see you. We're all introducing ourselves. Go for it.
Hi, nice to see you. So my name is Caroline, and I'm from San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm in graduate school at Notre Dame de Namur University. I'm in the multiple subject credential program. Just finished my first semester there, so I'm going to be starting my next one this week. I was interning in Indonesia, Jogja, at the Mollimont Girls' School. Teaching English to middle school and high schoolers, so it was like 6th grade to like 12th grade. And what I miss a lot, it's been kind of a really weird transition coming back to America. Just the environment's different, and the people and the atmosphere. I mean, Indonesian people and Muslims were very kind, generous, open-minded, just compassionate and loving and happy people. So it's not that we don't have a little bit about that. It's just the atmosphere with that is kind of changed, especially with open-mindedness, I find. So that's kind of like a transition for me, and I'm really missing my students and their happiness and
their qualities about them and their artistic qualities. But I kind of try to keep connected with them through Facebook and Instagram and all that. So, yeah.
Very nice. Thank you. So I'm glad that you guys all introduced yourselves and said something, and it's also supposed to lay the groundwork and that this is going to be interactive, that there's a problem if I end up talking for the majority of the time here. So I hope that you guys are ready to keep on talking about this. And the first thing that I wanted for us to reflect on as part of this experience is that all of you have now, from a period of 5 or 6 weeks to 8 weeks, you've had the experience of being unofficial ambassadors to a community overseas, and you know, with us and on your own, you went through a process of thinking about what is it that I want to represent in Morocco or Indonesia or Tajikistan or Zanzibar. What do I want to share about my community, about myself, and being an ambassador from that angle. And I think one of the really nice things about our initiative is that you're now an unofficial ambassador for life. And so you're not just representing who you are overseas, but you're taking those girls who you met at the Mualamat school, the people you taught at the Bacteria Center, the people you taught at the English-speaking school, the campers, all the way down the board. You're taking all those people and you're representing them to your communities in the United States, whether that's your family, whether that's on campus, whether that's at your local public library, whether it's to your best friends. But you have a message, you have something to share. And if I were to, you know, ride an elevator with you somewhere, and we just had a couple minutes in the elevator, what's the one thing that you would want for me to know about that experience and those people? You know, going down the line, 4 of you guys had some variation on the people who you met and that you became friends with, and you wanted to share those people in some way. A couple of you talked about community, but I put the question out there to, you know, who'd like to answer it first or start a discussion on this is, what do you want people to know about the country where you were, the Muslim world? What is it that they need to understand about your experience? Who'd like to go first?
I'll say something first. I think I would want to share with someone or you just what I was talking about before, how the people that I met and the girls, the students, are very compassionate, full of life, full of happiness. And they're just very driven towards their goals and staying true to who they are, and have so many interests that they want to go forward and have big dreams towards that. So I would just kind of want to share a little bit about that, because it's just it was their happiness and their joy that just amazed me. It felt more than I've seen like a lot of happiness with like students and kids over here in America, but it seemed very different and very special, and unlike something I've seen. So that is something I would want to share with people.
Okay, Sasha, go ahead.
One question I have been getting asked a lot is if I felt safe when I was there. Every single time that I tell someone that I was like in Morocco for 6 weeks, they're like, oh, and that comes up. And so I have constantly been talking about how more safe I have ever felt. I felt more safe in Morocco sometimes than I do in my own community. And when I tell people that, I think it really surprises them and it shocks them, because that's not something you hear a lot, especially in the news. So I think when I tell people how I felt completely comfortable and completely safe being a foreign woman in an Islamic country, I think that in and of itself is an important thing to convey to people.
Okay, good. Julia.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay, perfect. One of the things that I really found interesting was that Dushanbe and Tajikistan in general just has such a youthful vibe to it. And it seems strange to say that because obviously not everyone is young, but there's such a mentality of growth and opportunity, even though there are significant challenges. But when you think about it, the country is only 25 years old. So they're writing their identity, that this is the fundamental stage of that. And so that's not a lot of people. Well, first they'll ask about the safety. That is a really big concern that a lot of people have, but then they'll ask where is it, because no one's really heard of it, at least where I'm from. But they're in such a crucial stage right now that I think the more we can help them with this infrastructure that they're trying to establish, the better sense of confidence that they can have in that, because they're really searching for that identity and they're very proud of it. So youthful and proud at the same time are two things that I would say.
Nice. I think I saw a couple other hands. Okay, Kate. And then Jayla.
I think the biggest thing that I want to share with people is just the way that the people in Zanzibar I noticed navigate their life and how it's very much centered around love. And I think a large part of that was in fact due to the fact that almost 95% of the people who live in Zanzibar are Muslim, and what a large role that plays in all of their lives, and what a place of peace they're really coming from, and how at peace they are with themselves. Especially my students, or anyone you see on the street, there's striking similarities between them and Americans and just the way they act, and like their natural social mannerisms, but then when you get down to the core of who these people are, they really just have a lot more faith in humanity in general, and they do everything out of love, and they treat their neighbors and think that everybody is one, and oh, this person's not part of my family, but they really are, because we're all connected, and we're all here for the same reason, and we all love each other. And that's something that I was really, really just blown away by in Zanzibar, and that's what I'd want to share the most.
Nice. Jayla.
I want to kind of go off that too. There was this commercial in the Olympics that I saw right when I got back, and it was the Apple commercial that was like, "We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike," and it was a Maya Angelou quote. I don't know if any of you saw that, but it really got me thinking about my experience in Morocco, and it's so true. Like, I looked at the core values in Morocco, like family, such a huge central core value in Morocco, and then I look at my life here, and that's the same for a lot of people in my community and in my life and in my values in general. And I really like being able to share experiences with like my interaction of students at the university, because we are living at a university in Morocco as well, and just talk about how similar they are to us here, because people really are quick to judge differences instead of similarities.
So perfect segue, because you got from our elevator pitch of what's the most important thing to explain, and it seemed like the overarching themes were, I guess to crassly put it, Muslims aren't evil, and that we share these universal values and challenges. And you boiled that down to, okay, anybody can walk around and say that, and in this Google Hangout, all of us share this common experience where you guys can say that and you can instantly connect with each other and say, oh, I know what she's talking about, or I know what he's talking about, because I can relate to my own person and my experience that I got that from. But when you're in a conversation, you're doing a presentation, and you want to convey that point, I want to challenge each one of you. Sasha, if you're talking about the point of safety, or Julia, if you're talking about the vibe and the sort of strident ascendancy of character in Tajikistan, or any number of you guys from Caroline or Kate talking about the people, what's your evidence for that? So it's great to go and say we're all the same or we're connected in this way, but what is a piece of evidence that you can offer to people that enables them, instead of telling them we're all the same, that you tell the story of a person or of an incident that proves your point? Jayla, you were just talking about life at the university and some of the students that you interacted. What's an example of a story that you can tell or a piece of evidence that you can give that a number of you guys, I worked on your blog posts with you, and I would probably sound like a broken record of show me, don't tell me. And this is the same example of that, of let me draw that conclusion from a person you tell me about or a story you tell me. Kelly will offer examples of how to prove your point beyond, what could just be considered, and I don't mean to be a jerk, but what can just be considered cliche of, we're all the same.
Do you mean that question in terms of? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine.
No. You could go.
Okay. So I don't really know how great of an answer this would be, because the parallels I'm drawing aren't necessarily under the best circumstances. But I remember, Jayla, when we were in Casablanca that one day, when we were out shopping, I remember we were all walking in a line down the street, and then I just feel like someone just grabbed me. I was like, whoa, what happened? And then right before, I know, I just see this man walking by, and I literally just had a flashback to literally the same exact experience I had just walking down the street in New York City. So I know that's not necessarily a very positive example of how people from different places and from different cultures are the same, but it does kind of speak to the fact that sometimes, no matter, cross-culturally, men can act the same in certain situations. So I know that wasn't very positive, but yeah, no pun intended.
Right. Well, point taken, but probably not the one you're going to want to lead off a presentation with in terms of getting your message about Morocco.
I've only told my mom about that one.
Okay, but you're right that the story presents a conclusion for us. Not necessarily the one you want, I think.
Not the one you want, but
right.
Just a
okay.
way.
Somebody else. Another example.
What I was going to say is I truly got a sense of the fact that the youth over there kind of carry the same spirit as the youth in America in terms of their playfulness and, just their adventurous, mentality. And I feel like Caroline really got a good sense of this at where she was working. And, yeah.
Isaiah, the good, but what's the evidence? So you can tell me that youth are playful and they're cool and they're having a good time, but what's an example that I've never been to Indonesia? I don't know what it looks like. All these Muslims are the same. What do you mean the Muslim kids are playful and fun? What's your example?
Well, I mean, I feel like I'm lost for words trying to come up with an example, but I feel like they're essentially just the same as far as the youth in America.
Okay, so just think of it as an exercise of ask yourself that question, and we don't need to come back to you tonight on it, but just let that run through your head. Caroline, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one. I was trying to think of a more specific example of that. And one that came to mind was one of the girls that was in the debate club that me and Grace would be talking to. And one day Grace wasn't there, and I got a more personal conversation with her. And kind of showing how we're the same, we started talking about her Arabic language, and more specifically, we started talking about families and sister relationships where there was jealousies between her sister stuff, and then I would talk about stuff with my sisters where I had the same kind of problems. So I guess that kind of situation we're talking about where one sister is younger and one sister is older, and there can be jealousies in the family about who loves one more than the other, kind of shows that we are the same, in America, where we have the same kind of problems, the same kind of issues. We're united, even though we have different, religious faiths, different personalities. We are the same. So, yeah.
Good. Okay, let's do Jayla and then Julia.
And talking about the safety, I know you guys probably get this a lot too, but it's like, are all Muslims terrorists? And like, you have to be super patient with that question because it's like very obnoxious to me, and I'm sure it is to a lot of you. But like, my favorite example of drawing from that is just the attack that happened over Eid in Baghdad, and just talking about how like they are very serious about their security. Well, this is true for Morocco in their country as much as we are in the United States. And then I love talking about the security in Morocco, and like in Morocco, so how the security system is so effective is that it's kind of like a neighborhood watch system, and you have these guys who are parking cars on the side of the street that are just like regular guys in these yellow vests parking cars, but like they do a lot to prevent extremism from taking hold in the country by just keeping a watch out on everyone and looking for any like irregular behavior. So I really like just talking about how like the security there is just like we're taking the same security measures, and well, not the same, but we take security measures in the United States to prevent these things from happening, and they do the same thing there.
Okay, so common concern, and specific tactics to address that concern. Then I guess there's parallels to what we do here. Julia, what about you? You're muted. Please unmute.
Better? Okay. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is it's something that I wrote about in my first blog post, I think. But before I was in Tajikistan, I was actually studying abroad in Morocco. And I remember my last day there, I was saying goodbye to my vegetable man that I bought my groceries from every week. And he asked me if I was going home, and I said, no, I'm doing this internship in Tajikistan. And he got so worried for me, and he thought, oh, it's not safe there. You should stay here, stay in Morocco where it's safe. And these are all the same things that my family and friends were saying before at home. Like, why do you even want to go? Like, it's stay here where it's safe. And here my vegetable man in Morocco is saying these things. And I said, no, it's fine. It's very legitimate and it's a great work. And so he still repeated the same thing. I promised I'd be safe and it was okay. And then in Tajikistan, earlier you had asked me to find some experience to kind of tie it home. And I was having difficulty with this because I thought everyone in Tajikistan wants to go to the United States for their education. They wanna go abroad. That's what they're looking for. They're not going to be worried for something like that. But they really were. And I have this with me. Just 1 second. Before I left, because I traveled by myself a lot, my students got together and they gave me a Quran. And they signed inside. I have it here. Like, they signed inside and they gave it to me on like the last day of class. And yeah, because I traveled by myself and they thought this will keep you safe, this will help you. And in actuality, where I left, I didn't go back to the States. I went to Turkey to do some research. And I was in Istanbul right as the coup happened. And so through one of my friends that was still in Tajikistan, they were kind of contacting me and making sure, like, are you still safe? Is everything still good? Do you have your Quran? And I had to mail it back to myself because it was too big to carry. But it was very interesting that this same concern came from everywhere, no matter where I was. And I think that in itself is an element that everyone kind of, like, once you're part of that family and once you've been accepted, even if you're not, even if you're brand new, they'll still reach out to you and take care of you just because that is part of that unity, and it's very valued. So it was a very positive experience.
Yeah, it's a really nice anecdote with the grocer and then also with your students about, I think that's something that your families would really relate to in terms of how they felt when you left for whatever country you were going to, or friends, or whoever it might be, that common fear of the unknown and how you'd be treated as a stranger in a place that the people who care about you are not familiar with. Let me move to another aspect of this before we bring in Fiona and get her perspective on a little bit of this, and that's question of the impact that you guys had as short-term volunteers. And you have this very serious message that you want to convey, and sometimes the messenger is as important as the message, unfortunately. And there's this whole phenomena out there of voluntourism, and going and taking a couple pictures, putting it on your social media, and having the people that you volunteered with sort of be the subject of, instead of going to sites like, oh, this is me in an African village, or whatever kind of fill in the blank. And we design our programs in a way that that's not what we're looking for. Is that we are seeking for you guys to have an impact in places where people don't usually get to spend time, and these cross-cultural partnerships, and doing things that are specifically asked for. So I want for all of you to be prepared to face a line of questioning that challenges, what did you really do? You just went as a tourist, that you weren't there for months or years on end, and you were there for a short period of time, because I know that each one of you had an impact in some sort of way. But I think it's really important as you enter into these conversations that you think about and you're prepared to answer that question of, what did you actually accomplish? Give me a specific example of impact that you feel as if you had, whether it was from a citizen diplomacy perspective in terms of the people you met and you changed their stereotypes, or whether it's from an actual work and impact human development perspective, and what it is that you feel as if you accomplished. Kate, can we start with you? We didn't come around to you on
Sure.
The last one.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'm really proud about is during the last 2 weeks while I was in Zanzibar, I really, especially at the school where I was working, engaged in some really thoughtful conversation about Islam, specifically at the school with a lot of the teachers and the principal of the school, and I actually interviewed about 10 different students to get their perspectives on Islam and to learn about what they knew that was going on in the United States regarding Islam and terrorism, and just any facts they knew, if they knew about Donald Trump or anything like that. But I found the conversations with the adults at the school particularly really riveting. And I got a lot of response from them after these conversations, because I would actually have over hour-long conversations with these groups, and we would just be pushing each other back and forth on different topics. And they were really, really engaged, and I loved hearing from them after our conversations, like, this is great. Like, Fiona and I had a lot of conversations with teacher Salama. I'm sure you can imagine. But just kind of exchanging that dialogue openly and being able to kind of push back and say, well, how about this? Like, have you thought about it from this perspective? And also them doing that to me, vice versa, and really kind of breaking that ground and being at a comfortable enough level with these people who I'd established a relationship with to really kind of change their opinion and get their feedback on what Islam was to them, and also to explain to them the perception of Islam in the United States, and asking them, how can I change that? What can I go back to the United States and tell people about Islam? Like, what do you think is the most important thing? So I was very, very happy with those conversations and got a lot out of that and a lot of information to bring back, and just learning new things for myself. So that's what I was most proud to accomplish while there.
I think we can also say that had you not been there and had those conversations, that there isn't somebody else who would have wandered along, put on a hijab, come to the school every day, taught English to a bunch of different students, and taken those conversations seriously if they chose to have them. That this was an interaction, or a series of interactions that happened because you were there, and it's like in that sort of sliding doors other world. Had you not gone and we didn't have a volunteer we put there, those interactions wouldn't have happened.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, nice example of citizen diplomacy impact. How about somebody else? Isaiah, what about you? What do you think that the impact was of your volunteer work at Kampung Halaman?
At Kampung Halaman specifically, I really didn't get a chance to converse with a lot of my coworkers directly because of the language barrier, but I was able to show them some pretty cool things as far as video editing goes, and how we utilize the software in America and stuff like that. So, I mean, as far as like advocating for the states, other than a few questions about Trump, there was really not that much.
Do you think that in terms of what you showed them as far as video editing and different use of different software, was that new stuff, or did you teach people that didn't know how to do those things how to do that? Or, with International Youth Day, did you feed into what they had planned for International Youth Day in some sort of specific way?
Well, other than helping them document International Youth Day and capturing it on film and pictures and stuff like that, I just helped them make like subtitles and editing some of the videos, but other than that, that's as far as what I did in terms of International Youth Day.
Okay, well, don't undersell something like putting in subtitles. That and just as background for the rest of the group, when we were there for Isaiah's first day during orientation, they showed us a video that was made by like a 14 or 15-year-old girl about early marriage in her community and the high incidence of divorce, of people getting married 2 or 3 times by the time they were 18, and the difficult social situation it put them in. And there's no way that any of us would have understood that video had it not been subtitled in English. And it's taking this local message and this local problem and projecting it out to a much larger audience to understand it. So I see value in that. I think sometimes it's hard when you're in the midst of it to say, oh, anybody could have done that. But you were the one that was there and did do that. Similarly, like Jayla or Sasha, if I were to ask you about summer camps in Morocco, or the folks, Sasha, that surprisingly you taught English to in Morocco, who would have done that if you guys hadn't gone and been there? I mean, Jayla, do you want to talk about taking the kids to the university for a day and like what that meant?
Yeah, I actually just want to talk about, well, that was an awesome experience, and the kids were so excited to be able to do that, but just like the daily, every day we would go. For my first 6 weeks I was at a summer camp, and the kids would have a place to go, and in this community, like during the summer, these kids will just wander around, will hang out with each other, like there's no place for these kids to go. Like think of how quintessential in your life like going to summer camp was, or like how every summer you'd have these planned activities or play dates or like blah blah blah, but like these kids don't have that, and to be able to provide that felt so good. And even if like daily we weren't doing something that seemed productive in my mind, like some days we would play games for 2 hours because that's what the kids wanted to do, like Duck Duck Goose, because they were all into that. And like that doesn't seem productive, like it wasn't like I was teaching them a structured lesson on French grammar, but like to them that was something, and to them it was interaction with us and interaction with each other in a place where they could be welcomed and safe, and that was very essential. And that, when looking back on it, like even just that concept is important to me.
Good. So another point I want to drive home on this before I ask Fiona a couple questions is that there's the impact that each one of you had in your community this summer, whether it's development perspective or whether it's a citizen diplomacy perspective, but it's also all of you are part of a continuum. And Fiona was our volunteer at the English-speaking Muslim school in 2014, and she was able to do that because Zuleika did a great job there in the summer of 2013. And Kate was able to go there this summer because of the unofficial ambassadors that were there before her. And there'll be ones that go in the future because of how happy they are with the job that Kate did. And so it's not just the students that you worked with this summer, for those of you who are teachers, but it's the fact that you did a credible job and you put yourselves out there in a positive way that is going to enable students next year and the year after and so forth to be able to have that experience of, benefiting from a program like this. And it's the same for the Backtrack Cultural Center. Sasha, you're the first, Sasha and Jayla, Sasha, you're the first group that we put at the Greenside Development Fund, and Jayla, you're the first group that we put at Zawiya. At Tarmilat, we've had volunteers there for, this is the 4th year. Caroline, Stephanie was at Mualamat a couple of years ago. Isaiah, you're the first one that we put at Kampong Haliman. So there's an element of, because of the things that you did and the ways that you conducted yourselves, other people are going to be able to have these experiences in the future, and I think that all of you have grown from these experiences in some one way or the other, but at the community level in these places, there's a pipeline now that's going to remain open, or that has been opened for more people to benefit in the future. So Fiona, as you look back on this with a couple years of hindsight, what do you see as being important or impactful about the experience you had in Zanzibar for the students and teachers that you worked with? Like, what remains a couple years later as being significant? You're muted. Now you're frozen. What a climactic moment. Poor Fiona, she waited so patiently to... Okay. Let me invite her back. Hold on one second. Okay, there she is. Fiona, are you with us? We can't hear you now.
The microphone's on.
Okay,
So
you're good. We can hear you.
better?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, sorry. I guess, okay, so I think a lot about this because I studied sociology and anthropology in, oh my God. Sorry, I don't know what that was. I am not at home, so I'm hoping that this internet will keep working, but sorry if I cut off for some reason. But yeah, so I studied sociology and anthropology in college, and so I think a lot about my impact as a person, as an American, as a white person, as a woman, as a middle class person, wherever I go. And so it was important to me that this experience with AUA was not, as you just said, just volunteerism, but that I actually got to feel like my presence made a difference in some way. And it wasn't just like I got something out of it, that it was a two-way road and it was an exchange. So I think that at times I came away from this experience feeling like I gained a lot more than I gave. But when I look at it from the way that you've just been having a
Okay, we'll give Fiona a chance to finish. Oh, good. Here she is. We'll give her one more try. Okay, we're ready. Fiona?
Sorry, yep, I'm here. Oh, no, I'm not here.
Yeah, you are.
Maybe I'm here.
Don't
Okay,
swear.
cool.
You are.
Okay, so I think that one of the main things was just the fact that these children that I taught were able to have a connection with someone who was a native English speaker. And that's not something that most kids in Zanzibar, even the ones who are often more privileged in Stone Town, get to have. They don't get to have that experience of interacting with and being taught by someone whose first language is English. And I think that's something that both Kate and I provided for them that most of the children that live in Zanzibar will never ever have. So I think that's really valuable. Also, I think that just these relationships that we've all talked about, these lasting relationships where we got to meet people and have experiences and influence people and be influenced by these people who we would have never met if it hadn't been for this program. And just the little things, like talking about day-to-day things, like, oh, this is what I cooked this morning, or this is I have to go home and grade these books, and talking with the other English teachers about how they were grading their books and what their students were struggling with, and how do they provide discipline to their students, because obviously discipline is very different in Zanzibar than it is in the U.S. And talking about religion and talking about health issues like HIV/AIDS and all those sort of day-to-day conversations that you can't just have with someone in the U.S. when you're coming from such a similar background. I think that is something else that was very valuable, not only to them but to me. So I think those are two of the things that I would think about.
Nice. So let me ask you, I got two more questions and then bring it back to the rest of the group. A lot of the times, and we do these pre-departure webinars for you guys before you go, and we try to set it up so that you can speak with alumni, and we ask the question of, what is it that I should know before Fiona? We lost Fiona. All right, let's move ahead, and if Fiona comes back, then we can ask her a couple more questions. Tough conversations. So the Morocco folks have been home for longer than Indonesia and Zanzibar at this point. But what's been challenging about the conversations that you've been having thus far with friends or family?
Sorry, I missed part of that.
Yeah, Fiona, I got to come back to you in a minute.
Okay.
So I
that
asked.
mean we could lock in the attic, Katrina, and me and Isaiah go take.
So my question for the group was, some of you guys must be having some difficult times connecting with wanting to convey that important message and wanting to convey the impact that you had. What have you been finding difficult so far about some of the conversations that you've been having about your experiences?
So, for me, just kind of putting the trip in words has kind of been the hardest part. It's pretty much not easy at all, for me at least. That's my biggest struggle.
Okay, could someone respond to Isaiah then with the flip side of this in terms of what's been effective with talking about how they've been able to explain their experience to either friends or even to people that are less close?
So for my experience, and also talking about Isaiah, I am also having a hard time transitioning to like a new environment and different kind of like people reactions, I guess. And one of the people reactions, I think, I was having a conversation with my boyfriend's mother, and just kind of, it was great to talk to her, but also it's been kind of challenged because there's that preconception, what Donald Trump's view of Muslims. So there was that part where I was talking to her about it and just trying to explain that all Muslims are really great, kind, compassionate people, and yeah, just great people to be around. And that perception is not labeling, that is not true at all. So I think that's a challenge that I had to deal with a little bit. So, but yeah, it's just been kind of a little bit of a transition, but I still really, yeah, enjoy telling people about my experience and just trying to convey the message. And sometimes that can be hard because there's just so much that happened, you know, in Indonesia, so it's hard to figure out what you want to share, and there's just not enough time to share everything, you know, so you just try to do the best that you can, that you feel is the most important. So, yeah.
Julia, did you want to add to that?
Well, I definitely agree with the fact that there's so many things that you want to tell everybody, but it's hard to really convey the context also. Because even if you do have someone you're very close to and you launch right into these stories, things won't add up if you're not familiar with the context. They'll be like, well, why was that difficult? Or why did you brush your teeth with a water bottle? It's like, well, the water's not quite clean and you could get sick. Or then it keeps going back into, well, how sick can you get? Can't you just get over it really fast, or things like that. But there's so many little things that change the context of the story that you understand it because you were there and you sympathize with the challenges that the individuals of the nation are going through as they're trying to overcome them. But it's a very difficult thing to explain if that's just simply not present. If certain elements of maybe like gender inequity or lack of available education or anything, any small details that don't, they seem small if you just say them in a certain word, but they're not small. They're huge impacts. They have huge impacts on how daily life functions. But if you're just telling somebody in a passing conversation, it just gets overlooked, and you can see it be overlooked as it happens, and it's difficult.
So I think you guys are speaking to something really important, and one hard part of this is actually processing the experience and pulling out from the experience what is it. You have all these details, and how do they add up, and what are the most important ones? And then going back to Isaiah for the first thing that I asked you guys about, what's your message? What is it that you want people to know about this? And that's hard. That's hard to figure out. What is it that's if you had one thing that you could say to people about it, what is that? And then how do you gather all these details together to make a compelling picture? Julia, did you want to add something else to that?
Yeah. Well, and the challenge, at least for me, is to not launch into something without giving the background on some problem that might be unknown. That's been the biggest challenge, I think.
Fiona, can we come back to you now and ask you, you've had a couple years to explain this experience, and then the follow-on experience you had in Tanzania. What have you found to be constructive in terms of figuring out how to get through tough conversations or to articulate something that does justice to what you just experienced?
Yeah, sorry. I think it's so hard, but I do think it's possible. And I think the elevator pitch thing that we talked about earlier, that Ben was talking about earlier, is really important because some people are just going to want to hear, 30 seconds about what happened to you and who you met and what you did and that kind of thing. And then there are going to be a lot of other people who actually want to understand what it was like for you when you were there. And so I think having a few stories that really bring out what you feel like embodies your experience in whichever country you're in is really important. And of course, it's hard because you want to pick out stories that don't portray the people you were living with or near or teaching or whatever a certain way. And you want to, be careful of certain things because people have a lot of preconceived notions about the Muslim world. And so it's hard, but I do think that having some specific stories and some very concrete examples, like Ben was saying, of reasons that these people are so much more like me than they are different, or whatever your message is, I think that's really important. And honestly, a lot of people will say, people don't really want to hear your story, so don't tell them, or not don't tell them, but don't launch into them. And I think that that's true, that you have to be careful with who you talk to and how much you say. But at the same time, being able to just sort of tell stories and make connections is so important, because once you get back to the U.S., that's how you can continue this experience. That's how you can make it important and make it a part of the rest of your life. And I've found that I've been able to do that through volunteering at sort of community service type programs through my college with people from East Africa who might know Swahili or might have lived in Tanzania or whatever it is, and even just going to restaurants that have that kind of food, and I don't know, I feel like if you're willing to tell stories and willing to put your experiences out there, you will really meet a lot of people, even back home in the US, who have similar experiences or who want to talk to you about it and who want to have those conversations. So, yeah.
I think that's just such a wonderful point about knowing your audience, is that probably within 5 seconds of a conversation starting, you're going to be able to filter the person or the group that you're speaking with into one of two categories. People who are going to politely listen and have enough time to listen to this for a couple of minutes, 30 seconds to 3 or 4 minutes, and then people who really want to hear about the experience and want to understand more and have their own curiosities. And the challenge is to have something that you have readily available for the people that, it's not because they're bad people, they're not in tune with this, that you can still give them a piece of your experience for them to consider in a short period of time, versus the things that you really want to get into and explore, with a different audience that's prepared to have multiple conversations with you about topics related to, volunteering abroad or social justice issues or teaching, whatever the case may be. Does anybody else have a specific example that they want to speak to on this one? So then, going to the nuts and the bolts of it, there's a few tactics that I think are really effective for both of those kinds of audiences: the skeptical, disinterested, and then also the keen to learn more audience. And the first one we've talked about already, which is presenting hard evidence in the form of anecdotal stories, if that makes any sense, where you take people there and you introduce them through your eyes to real-life people or situations that happen, and you let them draw their own conclusion. And the more that you can take I, me, and I did this, and this was my thing out of the equation, and instead just present third-person narrative of, this is the teacher I worked with, and this is Salah, our country coordinator, this is his family, then that draws people in. The second one I like to do is using the prism of your own experience and how you changed to invite people in to experience the same changes. That so many of you wrote blog posts about women in the Muslim world and how there was such a more nuanced and rich life that people were living than what you had ever understood to be the case from following these issues in mainstream media. And you could very easily begin a conversation or presentation or story with, before I went to Morocco, before I went to Indonesia, I had these views that were mostly crafted out of watching Wolf Blitzer in the Situation Room talk about how Muslim women are so oppressed. After I was already teaching at the English-speaking Muslim school for 2 weeks, or at Greenside Development, or at the summer camp in Zawiya, my views began to evolve in these specific ways as I saw and got to know young women who did this and older women who did that. And by indicating to your audience that your views started out in a similar place where their views might be right now, and that you changed as a result of these experiences, you're opening up a door for them that it's okay that they can change their views too, that you guys are in, sort of the same, boat together, and had they had the same experiences that you had, then they also might change their tune or their approach on this. The other one I'll mention just really briefly, because I see we're out of time, is using self-deprecating humor. That if you're able to start off with some kind of funny story where you're not making fun of the people who you met or the culture where you were, but like how clumsy you were in interacting with it at the beginning, or assumptions that you had, or a situation where you found yourself, asking that you really wanted to go to the bathroom and you're saying in Arabic, but you're instead asking, do you have any pigeon on the menu? Because the word for bathroom and pigeon is so close to each other in Arabic, and it's hard for Americans to learn Arabic because it's a hard language, and Americans don't learn languages very well. And once you get your audience, or your big audience or small audience, laughing at you and your experience together, then they've opened up. They're willing to understand that point that we're all human. Like we're here telling jokes about Morocco and the Muslim world and Arabic, and it's not just all RPGs and bombs and people wearing masks on their face that are going to hurt you, and that this is actually a fun conversation that we're having. So if you're going to make fun of somebody, make fun of yourself, and I've found that it opens up a lot of doors. So the last message that I wanted to leave you guys with in this Welcome Home webinar is really, you guys are back in your communities. You're fired up. You've had these experiences, and I don't want you to feel as if you're alone in this experience and just to seek out ways to have it be you against the world. And I don't want you also to think that if I don't do something specifically for the English-speaking Muslim school in Zanzibar, or for Zawiya, if I don't get soccer shoes for the kids at Tarmilat, then I'm not building off of my experience. There are so many different coalitions out there of people that have studied abroad, have volunteered abroad, done the Peace Corps, who are studying international relations, who are concerned with social justice issues in this country, not necessarily in other countries, that you guys can find common ground on based upon the experiences you've just had. These people are allies in doing things together. It's almost impossible to do something by yourself. Fiona sent me an email, was interested in how it ended up starting AUA, and there's a whole long story behind that. But had it just been me and my idea, I never would have been able to do it by myself. Is that you need to have coalitions of people who agree with you on how we see the world and what it is that we want to do in terms of the change that we create. And these are big tents. I mean, Black Lives Matter has nothing to do with the Muslim world, but it has everything to do with the issues that we're working on, as an example, as in terms of decency and dignity and not stereotyping people and having equality. And so I just really wanted to, you guys all have each other's emails now. There's a much wider network. There's a LinkedIn group. There's Facebook. I wanted to encourage you to be in touch with each other, not just in touch, with us at America's Unofficial Ambassadors, but those of you who are still on campuses. There's such a common life that you guys are living in terms of the things that you see on a day-to-day basis and things that you can get involved with in student clubs. So I really encourage you to think about what it is that you can participate in, not just start up and lead, but be a part of that's already going on or that's forming together. With that, welcome home officially, and I'm really glad you guys all decided to become unofficial ambassadors. It's really nice to have you as part of the group. I'm proud of everything that I can look down the road, all of you guys, and Fiona, thinking back a couple years, the work that you guys did. And I meant it when I said you're unofficial ambassador for life. It's a way of thinking about things and doing things. It doesn't just end overseas, but it's what you do with it afterwards. So, thank you guys, and I'm looking forward to being in touch with you on an individual basis and hopefully on a group basis as well in terms of different things that you guys come up with and go about doing. That's it.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Ben.
Ben.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Fiona, special shout out. Thank you for joining. It's really great to have people stay involved a few years later.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay.
Happy to be here.
All right, good. Bye, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice life.
Bye.